go. Welcome, everybody, to Wednesday's Saturday edition of Sales Chatter. We're missing our good friend Ryan, aka the Logistics Monk. He was on a phone call that couldn't get off, let's just say, and then we'll wait for him to arrive shortly. But today we are talking about Roadcheck Week Blitz. We are talking about, did rates go up? What happened? And we're doing it with the good old Diener, the kingpin of knowledge and data, and Jeff, the bodacious cowboy. We'll be right back.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
We got Jeff reading his magazine. You know, it'd be funny if that was upside down, kind of like George Bush in the.
Let's just do it right.
I just went political. I can't believe I did that. But you got to admit, the book upside down is classic, right?
Oh yeah,
Jeff, that was a good pose for the way the show started, buddy. The old magazine. Yeah, just catch it up here quick before data day. How you guys doing? What's going on?
Yeah, we're great.
yeah,
Good
awesome.
to be with you. Yeah, I was just reading my book.
Yeah, see, we're on the same page. There we go.
Well, it's disappearing into the abyss.
Oh, you got the mirror thing, and we can't read that.
It's called Early Salinas. It's the history of the produce market in Salinas. I went to the museum yesterday on the way out just to get a sense of how it all started. So
Hey, nice segue into what we're going to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, I know. Eh? So
Yeah.
for all of you that don't know, Dean is visiting the produce capital of the world in California this week, and he's got some pretty interesting things to talk about, and we'll talk about Roadcheck Week. So Dean, we'll let you take it away, buddy.
our big broker symposium, our annual event out here for our top producers at Carmel Valley Ranch, which is a golf resort in the Carmel Valley. It's on the side of a mountain though, and if you've got a bad knee like I've got, that was probably the last place you needed to be. And so I had the opportunity to go to what I really wanted to do was on the way back, which is what I did yesterday, was spend time looking at the produce growing regions of the Central Valley, which is further inland, and Salinas, which is obviously just south of San Jose in the Salinas Valley area. And of course, that was the area we talked about in the show, hit mostly by all the atmospheric rivers. It's a fascinating area. 83% of our iceberg lettuce nationally comes from this one area. And I got to visit some farms and have a look at their production process. And it's so comprehensive. I sat and watched some of the fields, all the is working hard in the fields, in the heat, bent over, picking, cutting, sorting, stacking. And then it sort of goes into a machine, and then it gets stacked on a pallet, and the pallet ends up on a pre-staged 28-foot trailer. And then they hook two of these trailers together, and a truck runs it to the packing house. And then lined up on the dock on the other side of the packing house are hundreds and hundreds of refrigerated trailers waiting to make the dash cross country or wherever they're going. One of the strawberry plants that I visited, they load about 400 trucks a day of strawberries out of this one facility. It's just that, we talk about it in data, but, I always love to balance data with real world context.
Absolutely.
Just sit and see this in action. It was just breathtaking.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the 1930s. I mean, it was horse and cart days to the railhead or the port. And from there, I mean, the invention of Union ice in 1930, use of ice blocks that they'd throw in the top of rail wagons to keep the produce cold. And that's how they got it to the East Coast, was by rail. Of course, today you've got a team of 2 people who will do it in, just over 2 days. They'll run cross country in 2 days, and then they're back in 2 days. And I've seen, when I live in Boston, so I see all of these trucks in and out of New England all the time with California, almost always from Fresno. Like you see Fresno, CA, Bakersfield, CA, Salinas, Madera, can't even think of the name. Anyway, and you see them on the East Coast all the time. And then, of course, when you come over here and you see them all leaving, and it was fascinating to watch. Then, of course, the Central Valley is almonds, it's the biggest production area for almonds, grapes, What was really striking, though, was coming down through Bakersfield on I-5 region, was how dry it is. Right, so think about this. It's that dry, they're baling hay, right? Yet in the field next door, they're irrigating grapes. I just think about the contrast.
Wow.
Because I was following one of the trucks. Well, I was following a tanker, right? And I could see all this straw coming out from under the truck. And I thought, that doesn't make sense. There must be a hay carter up ahead. Sure enough, there's the two 28-foot trailers, the typical California double with the hay on. So I thought they're baling hay and irrigating grapes. And
next door to each other.
Yeah, like it's just such a massive area.
I can't get over the fact that they load 400 truckloads
a day
of strawberries a day,
and they do this year round.
Crazy.
This is where most of the strawberries are grown year round. Like they just grow year round. They ship year, massive business.
Yeah, just think of the logistics, mechanisms, and the mechanics about scheduling them. Who's coming in, what door. Who's on what, and that's got to be that's a 24-hour operation, right?
Yep.
So 400 trucks, you have to have that.
I landed in LAX at 11 p.m. right, and I had to be on stage speaking at 9 a.m. 6 hours north of Los Angeles. Right, so if you do the math, that wasn't a whole lot of sleep.
No.
But at 4 a.m., as I'm driving through the produce growing regions,
who's your travel agent?
Yeah, the workers at 4 a.m. Their workers are harvesting. They're in the field. They're in the field harvesting and they're irrigating. But the one thing that I'd never appreciated, because I could see all these 28-foot trailers staged along the end of rows. 28-foot trailer is a stack of 8 pallets and then a big stack of cardboard boxes, bins.
Mm-hmm.
And then I drove a bit further, and then coming out of Salinas at about 6 a.m., there's dozens and dozens of these trucks with two 28-foot trailers with the pre-staged pallets and cardboard. And then the truckers would drop these 28-foot trailers at the end of the rows so the pickers and the packers could load the trailer. Then they come back and hook them together and take them in. But it was the logistics of, because on the way up, I'd passed some CRST trucks who CRST purchased Gardner Trucking,
right?
And the trucks were loaded with nothing but cardboard boxes, flat.
Well, JIT. It's a JIT operation when you think about that.
Cardboard boxes, chemicals, fertilizer. So it wasn't just the produce out; it was all of the inputs going into the factory. But the one thing that really, really surprised me was the volume of trucks with cardboard boxes, like the number of companies that are just cardboard producing companies.
Consumable corrugated stuff. That's all like JIT. And I'm sure when they're packing it, they have their own stencils on that.
Right.
Yeah, just think about the coordination of that. 400 trucks, right? Working 24, pretty much a 24/7, 3-shift operation, and having that cardboard on the right dock or in the right field at the right time. I mean, it's just amazing.
I had billion-dollar customers that had trouble loading 5 trucks a day. I'm still blown away. And strawberries at that. So you're picking a piece of fruit this big and filling 400 trucks.
So they got to go into those little cartons first, right? So you don't get smashed. So just think of all the steps until it gets to that crate and then loaded.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
And all the raw product for salespeople. It's not just the freight going out, it's all the raw product that's coming in. Dean just said truckloads and truckloads of cardboard, then that cardboard has to be made. And where is it coming from? And wow.
Yep. But let me paint you a picture of what this is like. I went and watched some of the strawberry pickers. They get the cardboard tray that's already built for them, like the tray is not that big, and they run between rows and where they're packing it. They run back and they bent over picking strawberries, and they put them into the clear plastic boxes little bins that you buy them from in the supermarket. So they're loaded into these plastic containers in the field. And then they'll load maybe 8 of these plastic trays on a cardboard tray, and then they'll put it, and then they'll just run. And I could never figure out how they got paid, but they get paid by a barcode scan. When they give it to the guy on the pallet, they get a scan. And that scan counts the number of trays that they pick each day.
But just think about this. A step that was missed, that wasn't mentioned, they have to spray all these strawberries and get the dirt and everything off. So it's clean, it's fresh, you know, and they have to make sure that those little cartons carry 20. Like they have to have 20 in there, you know, for a full carton. Think about 400 trucks. How many little trays? How many millions of them? I mean, you got to think about how many are, and this is on a daily basis. This is crazy stuff when you think about the mathematics behind this.
And if they're running in the heat, how hot does it get out there? Like in the summertime is insanely hot.
No fat people running. I'm telling you right now.
Hard work. Just hard work. I mean, I used to pick potatoes when I was a kid, but bent over picking potatoes. It's hard work. So anyway, that was my day yesterday. I fly home today, but it was just good to see it all because it just gave me a new appreciation for how much logistics is involved. And, you know, Jeff, we talk about it all the time, but I'd never thought about the logistics that went into, you know, I sat and watched tractors, like, so they're plowing the fields because they're putting in another crop. Another vegetable crop, and there's tractors with like massive plows and sprayers and
planters and pickers and everything like that. It's almost, it's like a fine-tuned network when they're picking. That tractor's coming behind them and taking that plant out and then placing another one. I mean, it's just crazy. The mechanics, it's crazy.
Well, I know that my strawberries, when I go home and if I buy strawberries in Manchester by the Sea tomorrow, and it says Driscoll Farms on it, which it probably will as the marketing brand, you could safely bet it was probably picked last Friday or Saturday because that 2 days into the markets.
Appreciate the taste much more now.
So just fascinating.
Well, then it goes into the food distribution plants. Like they have one on the way back from Toronto, kind of like a Tobico area off the Gardner, and I mean it's got probably 150 doors maybe, and the volume of trucks that are in their park, like there's not a millimeter to spare anywhere, and these guys are sliding between cars and it's just trucks coming in, trucks going out, trucks coming, like and it's insane. And that's just like as you drive by, not even sitting there counting, you see that, you know, and it's the produce kind of distribution center that you see all the produce companies at, you know. And
so one more bit of useless trivia.
For sure.
I saw my first today. I've never seen a tumbleweed. I've seen them in movies, and I'm in this truck stop. So I went out to Lost Hills to film some of the dipping donkeys, the pump jacks in the oil field. Right, you know, the ones that go up and down like this. And because I'm fascinated, it's only 2 hours north of California, and you got in Los Angeles, you got this massive oil field. But I went back to the truck stop on the way back out, just near I-5, and I'm sitting there watching some of the trucks. Next thing, this massive tumbleweed rolls across the road in front of me, rolls into the truck stop where they're fueling, and works its way around down through the trucks, and then disappears out the other side. I've never seen a tumbleweed. It was the wildest thing. Have you guys?
Did you get it on film? Did you get it?
I did.
Yeah, for sure. Good for you.
Sure.
I posted it on social media. Like, it's wild.
I'll tell you what, though. I tell you what. You know, as a follow up of what you've seen, and I've said it so many times, the knowledge that you gain about being in the trenches and watching that mechanics of logistics work is so crucial. You know, that knowledge, you can't explain it unless you actually see it and how it works. You know, I just think everybody should have that opportunity to do that in their lifetime. It's amazing.
Well, that I guess that brings us to data.
Yes.
The subject of data. So something bizarre happened last week. You know how we've been talking about rates have been dropping and, you know, quite a lot of doom and gloom. Well, rates actually went up last week, went up about 8 cents a mile on dry van, up about 9 in refrigerated. Load post, so we saw a lot more volume in the spot market last week. So it was like people had been, this pent-up demand had been there, and then suddenly there was this surge of shipping going on. That's what it looked like in the spot market.
So Dean, can I interrupt you for a second? I apologize. I'm doing a bad job at being host. DJ says, "Good morning, gents. Great to see you. Have a great show." And then Scott says, "Where's Dean coming from this morning?" So that's and I love it because every time Dean puts Grumpy Pete's sleeper behind him, everybody's like, "Where in the hell are you?" So explain that background for a second. I apologize. I'm being a bad host. Usually Ryan's the one doing this.
It's just my sleeper cabin by Peterbilt, but I'm in a shady hotel in Bakersfield.
A shady hotel from Grumpy Pete to a shady hotel in Bakersfield.
Yeah,
love it. Stacy says each cog in the wheel is absolutely essential. We certainly take for granted how easy we can just go to a store and buy our food or any goods.
Stacy,
yeah, we really do. I mean, it's, you know what it kind of reminds me of, as you're talking about it. If you ever seen Castaway with Tom Hanks years ago, when his plane crashes and he's on this island and he's trying to feed himself and he's trying to like catch crab and catch fish, and then when he gets back they have like the mounds of crab on the table and the shrimp, and you see him pick up the crab leg and he's like, like, and that moment of realization that, you know, I literally had to learn a new skill in 2 days in order to like stay alive. Right. And people are just picking this stuff up and just eating it. And I think for me anyways, I started to get appreciation for food or lack thereof during COVID. Right. Because I found that all of our produce, the taste was gone, the flavor was gone, and that kind of stuff. And I think that for me, that's when the feeling of that kind of, you know, we take it for granted and we just go into the store and we do this. That's where it started to really, I started to feel it anyways. And I started to really get, not depressed, but frustrated with the fact that like in the summertime, like a really good strawberry is like awesome, freezing cold, or like a kiwi and just the flavored oranges when like they're tomatoes or apples when you go and pick them off the tree, and they were just like, oh my gosh, like some of those fruits just put a huge smile on your face for how good they taste, right? And I think we did. We kind of we lost that in the mix somewhere, and you know, they should actually be you know, part of training in freight brokerage should be somebody filming all of this stuff and saying like, listen, here's how, even if you're not in produce, just understanding logistically how things actually work. Like you look at this, right? And some people think, well, it's just a can of like protein powder, protein drink kind of thing. But what goes into it? And you got the packaging, then you got the fill, then you got the fill, and then you got the cap, and then you got the, you know, the blow mold and all this. And I think as people that consume, I don't think we've truly understand or stop and realize like
how is
43 countries,
how is
27 continents make an iPhone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just like we go to the store and we just buy it. And it's like, okay, oh yeah, I got the new iPhone. Woohoo, I got a new camera. Yeah, I can do Logicons or whatever they are.
I preach that all the time, Dan. I really do. I mean, it's like going into a bar and having a beer, and then a guy goes, boy, this really tastes well. But man, that cost is so much for a beer. And I go right into it. See this glass? Guess what's in it? I mean, I just start talking about it because, you know, the more that people realize that it's just not a jar, it's just not a candy bar, you know, and how many touch points that candy bar has in it to reach your mouth. It's unbelievable. It's insane. It really is. You appreciate it more.
So one of the things I did when I always travel, I go to truck stops, right? You know that, and I talk to drivers, and I can, you know, I don't have to ask a lot of questions because you can see how people are feeling, and by the way they react, by how clean or dirty their truck is, you know, how many mud flaps are hanging off. There's a lot you can tell without asking questions. But I did sit and talk to a bunch of drivers in the truck stop bunch, probably a dozen drivers over the course of the day, and I'd been missed check week. So I'd always theorized that Roadcheck week was more about the economics. So as in, when times are good, carriers can afford to take time off during Roadcheck week. When times are tough, they keep rolling. Well, it's got less to do with that. It turns out that carriers take far more time off during Roadcheck week when the focus is on braking systems and hours of service than any other focus point. Last year and this year, last year was wheel ends, this year's brakes, ABS, 2020 was hours of service. And when you look at 2020, 2022, and 2023, our equipment post volumes drop about 16% during the week of Roadcheck week. And then it bounces right back up. Yep. So you always hear anecdotally that carriers sort of sit it out and take time off. A lot of the refrigerated carriers do more so than drive out and flatbed. But brakes are the one thing that will stop you. And it doesn't have to be, you can get out of fairly basic out of adjustment. Like it's one thing, brakes can go out of adjustment in between rest stops. So it's one of those things that can catch you up really quickly, especially if you don't know how to adjust your brakes. Some fleets don't allow drivers to adjust their brakes. So, because I'm always under my truck adjusting the brakes because it's like life-saving technology. Like you've just got to make sure your brakes, because your brakes go out of adjustment over the course of a trip. If you're going up and down mountains, even automatic slack adjusters sometimes don't work. It doesn't automatically adjust the slack in the travel on the booster that puts your brakes on. So you've always got to be checking that. A lot of drivers don't, in particular, fleets where there's drop and hook trailers that rarely see a workshop. So
it's not necessarily that, and I'm learning something here, Dean, because I was never aware of that. It's not that the company does not have a high level of safety and service standard. This can happen literally in 4 blocks going up and down the mountain. So you have no idea as a driver pulling in, even though your company you might have just had a safety done, or you might have just, like, your company maintains the vehicles very well. You have you don't know, like, you have no idea when you're pulling into the chicken coop, when they're doing brakes, if you're going to pass it.
You got no idea.
Wow.
Especially especially power only guys whose only braking system they use is the trailer brake, the little trolley brake. You never touch your foot brake.
Yeah. Yes. The power only guys never touch the actual brake. It's always either the Jake brake or the trailer brake.
I'm not wearing out my brakes. Yeah. I'm gonna burn the brake shoes.
Our owner operators used to do that as well. We noticed that our trailer brakes would go faster when it was attached to an owner operator, because they wouldn't want to use their brakes, so they'd either use the Jake brake or they'd hit the trailer brakes to stop.
And one of the biggest things too, to get to your point about the dropping hooks, you have no idea what the previous driver did with that trailer. If he had a PM done it, the periodic maintenance on it, and they drop it there, and then the next guy that comes in to hook to it finds out there's all these things wrong with it, but you have to get it to a shop to get it fixed. And sometimes it's 100 miles away, maybe 200 miles. And you might run into one of these stops, and that's when you're going to get hit and hit hard. It's not about the last driver who didn't take care of the trailer. It's the guy that has the trailer on the back of his truck that's responsible for it.
Now.
So,
a lot of guys don't know what to look for, though, especially if you're new to the industry. You might not know what to look for. You might not know that a darker colored tire is a tire that's got lower air pressure. Because when you look at tire colors from behind, a tire that's under pressure will always appear darker because it's got less contact with the road, less pressure, right? So in particular, when you go across dust, like when you drive across dust, imperfections and scalloping and out of roundness on a tire will always appear as dark light, as in the dark is always not touching the ground, that bit. So there's a lot of things you can look for when it comes to trailers. But if you're new to the industry, heck, that stuff takes years of experience to spot. And unfortunately, in states where they need probable cause to pull you over, the trailer is the first thing they look at. Like it's so that's why drop and hook fleet. I think a lot of the CSA data, so my opinion, I think a lot of CSA violation data is skewed towards large fleets with drop and hook trailers and inexperienced drivers. That's my take on the data, because when you look at the frequency of times drivers get inspected or checked, it's like once every 9 to 10 months. It's a fairly rare event, unless you've got really bad equipment, or you've had one driver that's rubbed an enforcement official the wrong way once in the last 10 years. You want to bet that fleet's getting pulled in all the time. So, and that happens a lot. You know, I south out of Chicago through, I think it's Indiana, Ohio, maybe. There's a particular area that's just red hot for truckers. There's a problem there no one can really fix. But so yeah, I just think a lot of that data is biased. But that was Roadcheck week, and a lot of carriers take time off. It's a good time to have vacation. You know, during quiet times like this, when volumes aren't as busy, it's also when carriers take time to do a lot of maintenance. So yesterday I was talking to a guy in the truck stop here in Bakersfield, and he had the mobile service out, and he was putting all brand new tires on his tractor in the truck stop under a load. Yeah, so you know, there's like 600. There's 8 times $600, all new, you know, brand new tires. But he was doing it was at the truck stop, you know, and I thought that's efficient, you know. And so he's having a 10-hour break, and he's decided to, you know, get his maintenance done. I'd never thought about that, but there's this guy breaking down tires, breaking the seal, swapping off old tires, putting new tires on rims in the lot. Like just the stuff that goes on behind the scenes of what it takes to run a truck is staggering. So anyway, that was Roadcheck week. It was a significant. So what we saw in rates, though, was a capacity crunch. It was a similar volume of trucks off the road in the spot market that we saw during the polar vortex event and what we typically see during Christmas and New Year. Drivers take a lot of time off. So if you add the two things together, an increase in spot market volume and a decrease in spot market capacity, what we had was a significant increase in spot rates. So what we don't know is if that's going to be continued, if that's a trend. Like, have we hit bottom and now the market's bouncing back? I don't know that. It could just be Roadcheck.
We're 5 days away from Memorial Day.
We were moving some freight out of PA last week and into this week, and rates went from $950 all the way up to $1,400 for the LTL moves that we were doing, to the point where we had to pay exclusive to get one truck in, just because there was no equipment, none whatsoever. And last week, beginning of last week, when the customer came to us and said, "Hey, can you quote this?" we had tons of people that wanted the freight. And it's funny because I had an operations person say, "I'm not sure what's going on." And I'm like, I go, "Me neither. Like, how could it just dry up overnight?" And then it just hit me. It's and I don't know if maybe it could just be total coincidence that it was Roadcheck week, but I started thinking maybe it is. Maybe and it's funny because as we're leading up to this discussion, I'm watching as my volumes and my costing, especially watching that, and nothing had changed until those PA shipments. And it was like one after another. And normally, you have some of the big guys for us anyways in our industry, like the highlights and stuff that are always in that location. All of a sudden weren't there. We're booked out until Wednesday next week. Right. So everyone, how are you booked out like 2.5 weeks out? And it might just because they didn't put anybody in there this week. Do you know what I mean? Because of Roadcheck week or whatever. I never got into that, but it was very interesting. And I was like, I can't wait to share this with you guys, because we're talking from like 900 to the top price we had was 17. So, I mean, we're almost doubling that number in Friday, Saturday, Monday. So 6 days, including weekend, like doubling the freight cost. It was absolutely insane. And it's the first time I've ever seen it personally.
So you might be right. We don't know if it's a long-term trend, but don't forget in the backdrop, capacity is still exiting the industry. Yep. And this is something that I've been sort of struggling to put some numbers around because we've been losing a couple of thousand long haul carriers a month.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
But
So,
I think we need to, Dean.
pardon?
I think we need to.
Well, so let me. So here's how I want to arrive at a sort of a connect that helps you understand why spot market's a leading indicator. I'm not saying you don't, but I just for those listening, right?
For sure, yeah.
We've been losing a couple of thousand. So during the pandemic, 83% of all new carriers, owner-operators that joined the industry over the last 3 years joined DAT's spot market load board network. 83% of all new carriers in the industry. So that tells you, because spot rates were at record high levels, obviously most of them were chasing that high volume, high rates, high volume. They're the same group now that I hypothesize are moving out of the industry because rates have dropped. So why does capacity exiting the industry move the spot rate? Because contract rates are coming down, but contract capacity is fairly static, right? There's some big fleets that come and go, but for the most part, contract capacity is there so that Jeff's got a constant supply of trucks for his contract shippers. But in the spot market, it's much more volatile. And I'll explain it this way. The reason why 2,000 carriers that are mostly leaving the industry each month from the spot market is significant is this. So if you think about, if you've got, spot market is about 15% of the total market. And what with that 2,000 carriers we're losing a month is about a 2% reduction in total capacity. But if that's mainly in the spot market, it's about a 13 to 14% reduction in spot capacity. So think of it this way. If you've got 100 trucks, typically 85 will be in the contract market, 15 will be in the spot market. So if you see a 2% reduction in total capacity, that's a 2-truck decrease in the spot market, and a 2-truck decrease in the spot market, 2 divide 15 is 13 to 14% reduction in spot capacity. So why spot rates are a leading indicator of the market turning is the exodus of carriers, what some people refer to as a bloodbath, misleadingly so, is because it's not a bloodbath for the entire industry. It's a very small number of the total number of carriers, but they're mostly in the spot market. And when that capacity evaporates like it did last week, it doesn't take many carriers sitting at home with their feet up during Roadcheck week to move the rates up. Yep. So yes, Dan, for the market to reach equilibrium, capacity needs to reach demand. We just saw ATA's truckload tonnage index down 1.7% yesterday, down 3.4% year over year. So volumes are coming down. Here's the challenge. While ever diesel keeps dropping, carriers have more runway to hang in longer. And so as to when this market times, we don't know. I think, as we said last week, we could see 3 to 4 months of pretty tepid market conditions. And I think that's going to hold because the offer capacity is very slow at the moment. There's no major event. When Russia invaded the Ukraine, we saw the carriers leaving the spot market, spiked. But so there's no sort of geopolitical risk or major event here, even though hurricane season starts on June 1st and they're already tracking an event in the Atlantic. There's no event that's going to trigger demand. That's why we've said that watch the spot market, because when the data comes out on Sunday morning, when I pull it on our next week's show, if we see rates continue to go down, that tells you that we've still got too much capacity in the market relative to the volume. So that's going to next week. I think will be we can't call it a trend either, even on 2 weeks worth of data. Yeah. But
because you also got Memorial Day coming up, right? So
whellow,
look at
this. Hey, there he is.
Well, finally.
Hey, what's going on, guys? What's up? Yeah. I know the. I'm not going to jail. Come
on. Good. So you got my bail money, huh?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. I know I was dealing with anybody knows who deals with the CRA. They are a great company, but it does take a while to get things done. So that's the Canadian reference.
You would have killed all 3 of us right through. Your nose would have came right through and killed all of us.
Well, what's going on, gents?
I'm glad you're still here, brother. Glad you're still here.
Me too. But I was listening as I was waiting on hold for the last 20 minutes. But yeah, we're hearing pretty some pretty cool stuff about. I think it was like 400 truckloads a day of like strawberries. I thought it was really cool. So
yeah, and then we were talking about the packaging that comes in and stuff. And I'm doing a horrible job with the comments, Ryan. I just got to tell you. So we'll start. We got Trey in the house. Trey, how you doing, buddy? Thanks, pal.
Hey, Trey.
We've got we got Barb
Hey,
in the house.
Hey, Barb.
Coffee.
Barb, she was an amazing truck driver. We had her on during our thing, and she is amazing. If you want to hear bluegrass music, you hit up Barb.
Hit up Barb.
And then we got a love letter for Jeff from Francis.
Maybe we should have kept that offline in case his wife is watching.
Oh yeah. Damn. Sorry, brother. I didn't mean to do that. And then we got good old Scott who did a little math for us. Say 32 ounces of products, 36 ounces including packaging, 17,800 packages per truck, 7.1 milliliters, industrial packages of berries in 7.1 million packages of berries in 400 trucks.
That is nuts. That is nuts. That is crazy.
That is insane. Yeah, and we won't put his next comment up just because.
Well, is that all berries, guys? Is that like all like blackberries, raspberries, or is this like strictly like strawberries?
We're just talking about strawberries. Just at the Diarago / Driscoll Farms, one of their locations yesterday. They've got a few out there, right? So one was in Salinas. There's another big one in Watsonville, just further north. So, but just Ryan, it was just staggering to see the everything from the tractors plowing the field to the immigrant workers, to the truck drivers, to the cardboard box trucks, right through to these really big, fancy refrigerated trucks, all chromed up and shiny, heading out of town. So it was good to see the whole farm to plate, farm to table.
Farm to table.
I did a post on Instagram this morning. If you want to have a look at it, there's in one of the fields, there's a guy called Bob Lyman. He worked for 63 years at this packing house, and they built this.
God bless him.
I'm going to say it's like 30 feet high caricature of him. And when you drive up to it, he's staring at the most surreal experience. But in the field are these massive 30-foot high pictures of people, like a cardboard cutout, but it's a person with a hoe or a shovel or a fork, and they're in the field. It's really bizarre to see this. Anyway, so just lots of really interesting things out in Salinas. There's so much history there, but that was sort of my day yesterday.
Maybe they're there for people to go and duck and get a little bit of shade every now and then.
Well,
because I would imagine the sun would just beat down on you, man.
Gotta be.
A lot of the machines have canopies over them when they're in the field, when the workers are in the field. And so there's a fair bit of sun. But I did notice they start very early. It's a bit like Phoenix. I was in Phoenix last week, and man, they're pouring concrete at 2 a.m. You couldn't be out there at middle of the afternoon, 2 p.m. at 120 degrees.
No, not only that, the concrete cures way too fast. I know when we did our concrete in the backyard, it was like weather was the biggest driver. And I'm like, I'm sitting there thinking, it's summer, guys, let's just go. And they're like, no, weather. Yeah. So like literally, originally we were supposed to start at 10 or 11, and they ended up saying no, 7:30. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, I mean, we're talking trucks of concrete. I'm thinking my neighbors are gonna hate me when the concrete trucks pull up at 7:30.
They already hate you, Dan. It's not the concrete. It's not the concrete. But I want to get to Dean's point where he's mentioned here. You're talking about Driscoll Farms, and I know myself when I go to the grocery store, it's always Driscoll Farms. But we look at Pick Your Own, right? And I know we did the produce chart a couple episodes ago. I know, Dan, you could attest to this. Like Downey's farm, they're probably like the biggest like strawberry farm in Ontario that we see that gets loaded up pretty quickly. And I think they'll get started. I just actually pulled up their website. They'll get started approximately June 20th. Dean, do we see any differences? I think, Dan, you mentioned 400 truckloads a day. Do we see any difference where maybe they are like, maybe we'll do 200 and have the rest outsourced from like local farms? Do they account for that, or do they just keep on trucking until it's basically produce season's over?
Yeah, I mean, they produce, I can't remember the percentage, but it's like well north of 70% of the strawberries in the country out of this one area, like in the whole, California Valley. So it's constant, Ryan. I mean, there is some volume coming across from Mexico and Florida, but that's small in comparison to how much comes out of that California market. So no, I don't see it. I don't see any variations from other regions that move the needle. That's why produce rates were so bad last year, because California volumes were so low.
Yeah.
And we're
Did
still
you get up to
behind
see
at
any
that
of the
point.
almonds or cashews or any of the nuts moving?
I didn't know.
Did
I
you
didn't
get
see
that
it.
far north? No, okay, because I
No.
know that California is like 83% of North America is where they get their nuts from, is in California. So I can imagine, like you would imagine that volume or that operation, I guess, to be pretty
There
similar.
wasn't all the almond trees here around Bakersfield. There didn't appear to be any like fruit nuts on them. I couldn't obviously drive into some of them to look, but I could. They certainly weren't harvesting. So, but I should know that I did a big article on the almond crop. I got to say it's later in the year that they harvest.
Yeah,
because
I thought it was October.
we work with Blue Diamond growers, and they're a little bit towards later to the year, from that aspect. But even Jeff, Jeff and Dan, you guys are kind of talking about it as well. When you look at produce as a whole, I saw some people complaining yesterday about shrinkflation, right? So maybe that has affected like the cartons and the packaging. I know I've seen like Doritos bags have gotten smaller, so I would assume the same thing has happened with blueberry containers, strawberry containers as well. Trying to put that up. Jeff, have you seen that anything in your area? Any kind of differences that you kind of, because we always have an eye for that. I don't know, as a logistics professional, we go to Costco, we got an eye for different like kind of brands. But Jeff, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and something that's really interesting, because what used to sell at 12.2 ounces, it's the same price, but it's now 10.2 ounces in smaller bottles. So they're not spending that additional money on the raw material, the plastics and the boxes, like you said, Ryan. So yeah, we do see that out there, and it's just that I guess they're just trying to get by. They're trying to sell more at the same price with less value. I mean, when you look at the quantity in each carton or package, it's terrible.
Right.
I mean, just look at the size of Big Macs. I swear, when I was a kid, the Big Mac was like this big, and now you get it, and it's like this big, right? Yeah. It's like everything's shrinking.
White Castle burgers, right?
Oh, gotta give me some White Castle burgers. This is pretty awesome. Awesome kind of see.
Just on the one point I want to mention, NOAA hurricane season starts June 1. They're already tracking some low probability events. But one thing that really did catch my attention when I was in Phoenix last week, was how hot it was. And it was only 100 degrees in spring, right? So it's only 100 degrees out on I-40. But NOAA came out last Thursday with their annual report on how hot this year is going to be. And they said in the Southwest can expect a hotter than average summer. Yeah. So if NOAA comes out and says the Southwest is going to be hotter than average, what's average? Well, some of those days in Phoenix are, 120 degrees, maybe more.
Oh, yeah.
So there's going to be, this is where it comes into service failures and running trucks out of the Southwest, because if they're running recaps on their trailers, you want to bet they're going to be peeling off in the heat.
Oh, yeah.
This is when you see hot temperatures like that, you have to have brand new tires, well-inflated tires. That sort of heat coming, and that's based on my experience driving in the outback of Australia. When you get to that sort of heat, things blow up and break, like much more at a higher rate than they would normally. It's like extreme cold. Steel gets brittle and breaks in extreme cold. Extreme heat will expose the most vulnerable of equipment. And if you've got new drivers with older equipment, not well maintained, you want to bet you're going to have service failures for sure. And for all the car drivers out there, just watch for the gators, the big retread laying across the road that'll take out your front bumper on your car, because that's going to be a feature in the Southwest this summer for sure.
Well, and then
no doubt.
Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, sorry. Another thing, Dean, that I'm not sure if you're aware of this too, but Puebla, Mexico, they're a big exporter of like corn, coffee beans, avocados, and a lot of automotive parts. They're dealing right now with a huge volcano reaction right there right now, to the point that, and the reason why I found this out is because one of the dog rescues that we work with, Funky Town, they're in Puebla. So right now it's a state emergency there. And then when I'm kind of like researching the different things that come out of there, we'll see a delay in that as well, as everyone's kind of going to a like a SOS emergency mode right there too.
Yeah, that's good information, man.
Yeah, that's very good. It's. I was going to ask about forest fires, because we're experiencing them very early up here in Western Canada, and how does that on the West Coast impact what we're talking about, because California's got huge forest fires all the time.
Right.
And now with the forest fire season starting early. I mean, I think they put out was it last week, Ryan? They put out a warning, and if Mark's watching, he's in Alberta, he knows, where literally it's like the air quality is garbage. Like, people can't go out and work outside all day.
Yeah.
Like, it's so bad, the air quality, and you start having that loom over into California. What does that do for the production of produce, or sorry, for the shipping of produce or anything like that?
Lumber, yeah.
Lumber in particular. Yeah, absolutely. I think it slows everything down for sure. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, but that Mexico volcano is very interesting, Ryan. Yeah. Amazing where you find information, right? Like, you're talking to a dog rescue, and they're talking about information that actually affects massive amounts of logistics and trucks moving, right? Like, it's crazy how information comes in, not just from a single source.
Right?
Yeah,
everything is.
That's what we have to, right? And I talk with other logistics professionals too, and you have, like, Jeff, you have a great knack of that, of keeping your ear on the ground and putting together all these solutions and being able to see forward, and Dan as well. But when we have these conversations with Data Day, I think it's just so important that we all kind of have different points of view, because it's like, hey, if there's a slowdown here, as Dean always kind of mentions, you talk about drivers, driver qualifications, sleep apnea, things like that. And it's just, okay, those things are going to factor us regardless. And as we're kind of coming up here, we got the Canadian holiday this week, Memorial Day coming up next week as well. So we're kind of going to that push. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if you guys talked about this before, but we're seeing shipments starting to really ramp up, I would say, in the last 2 weeks. So that means capacity is going to get a little bit tighter, but it's important. I think it's going to be a little bit normal. Dean, I know that obviously in Fresno, California, you're able to kind of see these farms and kind of go visit your customers and so on. What's the outlook? What are you hearing from people there?
Perfect segue. There's going to be 260,000 fewer weddings this year, according to the Wedding Planners Association. Yes, there is one. Why I know that, I was talking to my why, because I know you're going to say
why would you got to justify it?
Exactly. So, in the catering business, and they're doing all the commencements and college work and university graduations, et cetera, but they have no weddings booked for the fall. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because one of they're an approved vendor at a number of wedding venues in Boston. No events planned. So why aren't people getting married? Well, they had a lot more weddings last year compared to prior years. So last year was a catch-up year. This year, volumes are down. So it got me thinking, so if we're seeing less weddings, what else are we seeing? So I went to, and here's two indexes you could follow. One is the Technomics Tindex, and the other is the National Restaurant Association's RPI, Restaurant Performance Index, which are both indexes that measure sales at the traffic and sales volume at the point of sales from technology. So you think about food services and restaurants, both of them are down. People have put the brakes on going out to restaurants. The Technomics Tindex is down about 2.8% from January's high. The RPI from the National Restaurant Association is down 1% from February. Majority of restaurant operators report, more concern, a mixed outlook, as restaurant operators expect both sales and the economy to soften this year. So what that means for produce season is that I think at most probably flat demand, maybe slightly less. So, I mean, hard to know how this is going to pan out, but produce volumes as of this weekend are going to be fairly important as a benchmark. And then the second benchmark is going to be July 4. As so far, rates are up last week, but we don't know if that's going to hold.
Dean, is that benchmark as far as the POS on restaurants? Is that national or is that regional?
Yep. The national.
I'll tell you what, the restaurants around here are booming. They are every single weekend. I mean, I'm not out during the week because I'm working, of course, but during the weekend, the wife and I love to go out to restaurants. Every time we do,
Jeff, I'm seeing fewer restaurants. I'm saying it's like planes. I'm seeing smaller planes packed to the rafters.
Yeah,
every flight is packed. So I think restaurants, because in my town, that depressed Manchester by the Sea town after the movie, that horrible movie.
Right.
There's 2 restaurants that have closed. So the only restaurant that's there is absolutely pumping.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether that's part of it. Is we've just got less restaurants and more volume in what's left. That could be part of it.
Well, 2 things, guys. 2 things that I pay attention to as Jeff is talking about. Well, 2 things I want to talk about that specifically is that you got to look at the season right now. Right now is the NBA and NHL playoffs. All the sports are playing right now. Baseball's back. Football's coming back up a bit. So there's always going to be that. Right now, NHL and the NBA, they're going into their finals, I believe June 1st. So every day is a game. So you're going to see pubs and restaurants packed to the brim.
Right.
Another thing, too, just to add to that, Dean, about what you're saying of last year about being a catch-up year. I know friends who put down deposits for halls and weddings and all that stuff during COVID. And instead of them getting the refunds because they didn't have the capital to give people back the refunds, they're like, okay, we'll just postpone it until like last year or the year before, right? So we would see an influx. And I think that's what's really happening, even from my side. Like when I scroll on Instagram on the weekend, everybody seems to be at a different wedding. So it just kind of depends on where you are kind of too. And like people kind of, because I've had people try to sell their actual reservation or their booking for a hall because they couldn't get people here in time or different circumstances, right? That they probably got a crappy week. And I don't know about
different
you guys,
nationalities, ones that have to bring in a lot of family members from overseas and stuff and all that. It'll, and that's mainly our area, right? We see that a lot. My neighbor said he's got 12 weddings this summer. 12 weddings.
I got five. Yeah.
And he's like, I just can't do it anymore. He goes, I want to move away to North Bay. He says, I don't have to go to any of the weddings.
We'll go for him. But yeah, I love that you said that, Jeff, about like, the restaurants are booming. And I love that great point, Dean, that you just made as well, that, hey, maybe it's fewer restaurants and they're filled up to the brim. Dan, you could attest to this. I went to Jack Astor's last weekend for the first time since COVID. It's a short menu. Right. So you look at like they're not ordering as much. Like when you go to those places and they got like 5-6 pages of a menu, those have condensed to like 2 or 3. Right. So when you look at a national scale, whether it be US or Canada, you got to look like, OK, maybe they're not. If they don't do any beet salads anymore, they're not going to be importing beets anymore. If they don't do chicken wings anymore, they're not going to be importing chicken wings. So there's going to be some kind of different scale there.
Yeah.
You know what I notice a lot of? So I'm in a fairly small town, about an hour and a half north of Toronto, and there's no buildings in town. So we're seeing more and more food trucks, like literally park in a parking lot, build a deck around their truck. So this is now their spot. And we've got 3 of them in town now. Whereas before there was none, and now there's 3. And it's like the variety of food is crazy. You got one that's like all sorts of poutines and chicken wings and all this kind of stuff and like pub food. And another one that has everything from oxtail to curry chicken to to burgers to and I'm like, whoa, but it's food trucks is what we see happening all the time.
Same here, Dan. Sparta, New Jersey. I'm telling you right now, right next to the Dairy Queen, every Thursday and Friday, there's a different food truck that pulls in there. They put up the phones, and there's a line down the block for them. You know, lobster rolls, Chinese, Thai, you name it, whatever it is. That it's not the same truck, which is really interesting. Every week they change it up. There's like a huge variety, and I've never seen that before. So that's a good point. That's a
we went to like Rib Fest last year. 2 years ago, we went to just before COVID. There's a huge food truck festival in Burlington for like almost a week, and there's like 50 food trucks, and it's they just all park. And we're talking to these people, and they're from all over. I mean, they're from down into Windsor, all the way over from Quebec. They're up north. They're from like almost everywhere, and it's just they're popping up everywhere because you think about it, right? Like, you want to open a restaurant, what's the cheapest way? Food truck.
Well, I think it's one thing I want to mention with both of you guys said that I love that are great points that you're seeing them all over the place. But Dean, I don't know if you could agree with this or not. I feel like the progression with your wife having the catering business, the progression of a food truck is to get a restaurant. You know, so if you have a food truck, you kind of start small, then you get the retail space, and then you get another couple of retail spaces and kind of go. And then for a logistics professional, it might be good to have those conversations with them because they're probably picking up all their produce right now every Tuesday at the Ontario Food Terminal in Toronto. But it's going to get to a point where they scale up. Yeah, they scale up. Oh, you guys were? Oh, sorry.
It's funny. No, but it's funny you brought that up, Ryan, because I was saying it's right on the Gardner, and the amount of trucks coming in and out of there is absolutely insane. Like, it's insane.
So when you
Insane.
scale,
So, and then Ryan just brought up, that's pretty cool.
So
Yeah,
many
you're
good
right.
points today. It's unbelievable. So many takeaways. It's
Well, that's what we're doing, right? And I think for the mindset that I've had the chat with you guys is, if I'm a logistics professional, I'm a late rookie, amateur, whatever. How can I take this data and tell my story? You know, you're having a conversation with your local people, and I believe in fostering those relationships. Just like Dean is right there on the ground, he's talking to the workers. He knows when he goes to write his next blog post about Fresno, California, he has actual facts. It's not something that he read or something that he might have heard through hearsay from somebody else. He's getting that facts, and I think for me, what I take away is, if you're seeing these things in the changes, talk to the carriers, talk to the farmers, talk to everybody who's a part of this, because that firsthand information, no one's going to be like, oh, I heard Jeff talk about that on his show. You know, like, I'm not going to fact check it. You know, fact check everything.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what's important to me.
definitely, please do.
If you talk to food terminals, take Dean's, marriage and wedding information and ask the questions, right? Because if it's Dean, if it's your area, or is that database North America?
well,
Like,
it's
is that
not
the
the
US?
total database of weddings,
Okay.
but
Okay.
we're seeing it in New England, right? Which is generally a pretty
So if
decent
you're seeing it
area.
in New England, you're going to see it in multiple
Possibly,
states.
yeah.
Across, for
So
sure.
it's a great point, Dan. You've always got to weigh information on your own scales,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's really important, right? You got to pull data in from a lot of different sources and figure out how it applies to your business right now. That's the key.
Yeah, it's like,
Well, Ryan and I have been
I'm
talking
reading
about
this
this
right
for a
here,
while.
right? I read this periodical. I got supply chain brain. I've got all these different things, and I'm just taking all those resources and I'm trying to develop my own point of view from everything that I read. You know, it's not that we're wrong; it's what we're seeing as individuals, and we're trying to tell people that. But it's up to those people to go out on their own, like everybody said here. Do your own investigation, do your own fact checks. This might all come in line, which is great to give to your customer and your prospects. It's all good stuff.
I had someone try to tell me that large truck companies can run cheaper than an owner operator, and I said no, not the case. Owner operators are far more productive, because it's not about the size of the fleet; it's about how many miles the trucks do. I said a large fleet has very big overheads and they do about 400 miles a day, whereas an owner-operator has next to no overheads, can run 600 miles a day. So when you put more miles across your fixed and variable costs, your operating costs are actually lower. And they didn't think through the productivity angle, right? So when you look at just general ATRI data, it says a truck costs X to run. You've got to think, yeah, but that's not going to be applicable across the entire industry, because it's very nuanced. A lot of data is very nuanced. So you've got to actually dig deep to get what's really going on.
I think,
in that
Dean,
market.
also the people that you were speaking to, they're probably looking at it from a superficial level. Well, big truck companies can buy diesel cheaper than an owner operator, and they can get, automatically they think it's just automatically cheaper to run. And it's like how many salespeople out there think, oh my God, like I make my company so much money, I'm going to open my own company. And they don't think through what the reality of having your own company is, meaning everyone else in your company might get a paycheck but you. Yeah. Right. And they don't think through that portion of it. It's just, oh, well, I make this person so much money, I'm going to go out on my own. It's half information. It's speculating at best, because sure, you can buy parts and tires at a cheaper rate than an owner operator, but it's it's not the same story.
Yeah, it's not if you're running 85 to 90%.
Yeah, here's a quick clue. Do your homework.
Yeah.
Do your homework. And we're going to wrap up on there, gents, as we're going to leave with that to do your homework. But before I actually want to do our closing, everything like that, I want to shout out to Anthony Horde. We're talking about marriage. He actually got married. He's a big supporter of our show and a big supporter of everything that we did in Empowerment and Logistics. He got married over on the weekend to his now wife, Andrea. So I want to give him a big shout out. So happy. Welcome to the ride. It's a fun ride. And, it's awesome, man. I told him that getting married was the best thing I ever did. So, Dean, I did catch the episode yesterday. Can you tell everybody about Dat IQ Live? You got some I think you got a pretty cool guest coming on the 6th, I think it is. But definitely love for you to plug away.
Yeah, we actually didn't have a show yesterday, and because we were at the event in Carmel. So we didn't have a DATIQ live show, and I'm just quickly looking up here. 5:30. Tim Denoyer is coming on next week. Tim Denoyer is the Vice President of ACT Research. The week after Ryan is Saritha Willingham from SJW Logistics. So she's the week after. So
she's awesome.
The next 2 weeks
like
again.
her.
And I've got some pretty actually chock-a-block full all the way to July with guests, some really super guests. But Saritha, thanks for the lead, Ryan. She's a very smart CEO of that company. I'm really looking forward to talking to her, especially about how you scale a small company and grow with your shipper. I think that's going to be a fascinating topic. So look for that on the 6th of June.
That's going to be awesome. And it is every Tuesday at 10 a.m. live,
10 a.m. Eastern.
LinkedIn and YouTube, I believe it's on. So definitely catch that. Any kind of conferences, anything like that coming up? Because I know you mentioned you kind of had the last one, I think, last. But
yeah, no, I'm done. So the next event's not until the Journal of Conference Inland Shipper Conference in September. So
nice.
You got the summer off, Diener.
You got that. I know. It's like he's going on the school hours. So that's awesome to kind of see. Cowboy. Cowboy, congratulations on your first episode this past week of your show. Can you tell everybody about what you got going on?
Yeah, I got the Storytelling Chronicles, Life Lessons in Logistics on every Monday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I always have a mystery guest, so I never let that out of the bag, but I can assure you that I have CFOs, COOs coming on board from different companies, psychologists, people who have been in the industry 5-10 years. We have the older folks like myself who will be discussing all the different types of things that everybody faces in logistics, all those little problems, try to help out everybody out there. So check us out. This Monday, though, is Memorial Day, so we will be on Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. So check us out.
That's awesome. Pretty proud of everything that you're kind of doing. And even for us here, this is Sales Chatter, the logistics podcast where we aim to help 10,000 reps hit $1 million GP. We're changing up things a little bit. We got things kind of going on left, right, and center. But tomorrow is Personal Development Day, one of my favorite days that Dan and I have curated together, where we pick 2 clips and we play them and we give our thoughts on it. So it's pretty cool to kind of see. We will hit the replay at 2:30 p.m. Please like, subscribe, share this with a friend, a neighbor, your spouse. Anthony, share this to your wife, my man. And the Amazon driver, or maybe the strawberry truck driver who's bringing you your organic strawberries fresh to the door today. With that being said, Dan O'Mac.
You threw organic in there?
Oh, yeah, you got to go organic, man. You got to go organic.
I like how you threw that in, brother. That was awesome. We actually got a couple of announcements coming up tomorrow or Friday. So stay tuned for that. Visit saleschatterlive.com. With the show streamed on that every time. Go to saleschatterlive.com, go to the podcast section, and now we're on 9 or 10 different podcast stations. Pick your favorite one, listen to us everywhere you are, and stay tuned for those announcements.
Awesome.
All right. Well, with that being said, we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Oh.